do. So you don't care about the money? Well, yes, it's true. And I'm so blessed to be fulfilling my destiny. All material things could mean less to me. Only thing I ever could need is a Sarah B sample with a dope ass beat. And get the mic check, all the levels right. And if it's good, then I'll be here for several nights. Cause the only thing I need is a strong supporting team. The most important thing that helps supporting my dream. And I can't forget my family, helping keep my sanity. No matter what I do, I know they'll always stand for me. No matter what I do, I know they'll always stand for me. Yeah, cause I can only do me, that's all I know. Dodge the difficulties and take life slow. And if I ever slow up, you know I always show up. It's still the same on me, even if I blow up. Love is what I do it for, love is why I'm rapping. Love is the main reason for how all this happened. Love for all my fans, love for all the shows. Got love for all my memories, no matter where I go. Even if I'm out to nothing, I know there's always something. It's not a fitness test, but it'll always keep me running. One good thing about music, when it hits you feel no pain. So I keep it close to me, make sure it never goes away. From the start, I knew it in my heart. If I made one person happy, then I know I did my part. Now, if I stay into it, and people dig the music I put on for my cities, and know I always do it for love. Yeah.
Just wondering, when we present, do we stand?
Yeah,
there?
yeah, stand there.
Because then you can see the screen.
Right, yeah, man. It's men only. Right. Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for today's Session 5 Oral Abstract schedule. Today's session is centered around urban community leadership. My name is Jumoke Patrick. I'm the CPO for IAPAC in Kingston, Jamaica. And I'm, should I say, gladly your moderator for today. So I'll be guiding you through the hour and a half that we have for this particular session. And we have some very interesting abstracts and presenters. For those abstracts here today, we have 8 in total. And I do believe we have all 8 today. So, what I'm going to do is, for each abstract, I'm just going to ask, should you have questions, you just write them down while the presenters are doing the presentations. And then at the end, I'll try to accept all questions that are asked. Unless your question is asked already, I suggest you don't ask it again. But we'll hold it to the end, but we have one presenter who will have to leave after his presentation. So we'll ask him to present first, and if there are any questions, he can answer. and then he leave. He has to get to the airport. So, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, the first presenter we have today is Sia Bonga and Mandy. I tried. And it's centered around ward AIDS committees, building community ownership through local leadership, coordination, and capacitation. Please make him welcome.
Thank you so much and good afternoon, colleagues. I want to really apologize that I have to leave. I think I'm not Gary. There's Gary's presentation. I'm Siyabonga Nzimande, Civil Society Leadership in eThekwini. I'm just going to take you through urban leadership strategies that we have developed in eThekwini that they have been working for us, and then we'll take it through that. I want to really apologize to my fellow panel that I overtook anybody. So I want to present to you the strategy on ward AIDS committees. You will hear us really speaking about ward AIDS councils or other ward AIDS committees, but in terms of our terms of reference, how it's scripted, it's actually ward AIDS committees where we're building community ownership through local leadership coordination as well as capacity. So, okay, just to give you a background of eThekwini, sorry, I skipped a slide. I'm trying to go back. So eThekwini metropolitan area, which is Durban, it's located in the east coast of South Africa in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, and it is the third largest metropolitan municipality in the country, following Johannesburg as well as Cape Town, which then gives you a very clear picture why we are part of fast-track cities. It spans an area of approximately of 2,555 kilometer squares and shared boundaries with 3 districts, which we share district within Ugu, which is in the south, and Ilembe, which is in the north, and Umgungundlovu to the west. The metro is divided into 111 municipality wards, which are grouped into 17 zones. The metro has approximately 3.9 million people, accounting for 34.7% of the total population of the KwaZulu-Natal province. It is estimated that we have about 8,802 households which are headed by children and young people between the ages of 15 and 19, and we have about 42.14% of households which are headed by women alone. And then 2.1 million of eThekwini residents live below the upper bound poverty line, which is within the minimum wage, which is way even within the minimum wage that we have, which is about 1,227 per person per month. And we have about 17.1% of the population reporting to have no income in 2016 state survey. 16.8% of the population has no education, while 5.8% have a higher education qualification. The population of people who live with HIV, it's about 600,000, which is 607,2437, and then 33% of people living with HIV in KZN, that's how much we account for, which is 8% of people who live with HIV in the context of South Africa, just talking alone about eThekwini as a city. Which way do I point this? This way or this way? There seemed to be a delay. Okay, so, sorry, I skipped a slide. Just to give you the aerial view of eThekwini district, this is the entire eThekwini district, and you'll begin to see that we've got different zones. There's the north, we have the west, and then we have south, and then we've got south central. In the south central, we've got healthcare facilities, which you'll see that they are made up of one tertiary hospital, and then some district hospital, which is the RK Khan, and then you've got King Edward Hospital, and then you've got Eddington, and then you've got some CHCs, which is your community healthcare centers, which you'll find Guamashu, Guatabega, and then you'll also find situated in the lower south, which will be find like your D Clinic as well as Prince Mshieni Hospital. Okay, so the multi-sectoral response which I want to present to you, which makes part of the urban leadership, it's really based on these documents. We have the South African National AIDS Council, which has the goals, and now actually it's due for review. We've been engaging with civil society, government department, partners, including Global Fund, PEPFAR, CDC, where we're now actually coming to the end term of this document, which is our National Strategic Plan. And then in our province of KwaZulu-Natal, we have something which we call Provincial Council on AIDS, and we also have our provincial plan, which is also in line with the National Strategic Plan. Then in eThekwini as a city, we also have a multi-sectoral district implementation plan, which also actually really resemble what is in the National Strategic Plan, what is in the provincial, but then we tailor-make it based on the city population and what we're supposed to deliver within the city as well. And then we have something that we have developed in KwaZulu-Natal, which we call the 3-1s principle, which we have adopted as the 3-1s principle of coordinating and multi-sectoral response by all stakeholders, and one strategy, one structure, and one M&E framework. And what does that mean? It means that we have one framework, as I said in the previous one, we really have one structure, and we have one M&E framework. And in the next slide, I'll show you what does that look like. We have a governance that looks something like this, which is your South African National AIDS Council, we've got Provincial AIDS Council, we've got District AIDS Council, then we have Zonal AIDS Council, and then we've got Ward AIDS Committees, which we've got sectors which are government sectors, we've got business sector, we've got labor, civil society, and then we have an oversight into making sure that all these structures are functioning very well. We've got the Deputy President at national, we've got the Premier at provincial level, we've got the District Mayor who are supposed to be here, and then we have the Office of the Premier, and the Office of the Mayor overlooking the zones, and then we've got the ward councillors also making sure that the structures is fully functional at the ward level. This is what it looks like. I think we're kicking the paradigm, and I really want to give really acknowledgement to our partners as well as Fast Track Cities for this one, because you find that SANEC is seen as a very big thing and a very huge thing because there's a deputy president, it's at presidency level, but we believe that this is where the real work is taking place. This is where all effort in facility base is taking place, which is the Ward AIDS Committees, then we've got the Zonal AIDS Councils, then we have the District AIDS Council, and this is just the structure. But notice how big this piece of the piece is, because we really believe that where the real work is taking place. Actually, we say this is not important, this is not important, this is not important, this is where the most important work is happening. So we actually say to everybody, that's where it's important. So I want to share this quickly with you. I'm almost to the end. So what we did, part of this response as part of urban leadership, we did work trainings. What we believe that the reason I said it's important, therefore we felt that it was important for each and every stakeholder at the community level to understand this. Therefore we decided to train them, do and share with communities what is Ward AIDS Committees, and also have the journey of people living with HIV, where we're using the conversation map, where we talk about you is equal to you, the importance of getting on treatment, the psychosocial support. And we also begin to share, because most of the people, when you're in Canada, you'll hear people at the International AIDS Conference, everybody in South Africa, we speak this language that if you take away eThekwini as a city, South Africa doesn't have a big problem with HIV and AIDS pandemic. If you take away KZN, South Africa doesn't have that big of an issue. But because of this one city, South Africa is a problem. Therefore, we decided to make sure that we take the statistics to the local level, we localize them based on that ward. What does it mean for this ward to have TB incident, to have sexual harassment incident, to have gender-based violence, whatever that were drivers and key drivers of HIV and AIDS, we really bring it down to the community level. And what is very important in the training, we also speak about U is equal to U science behind this, and we understand there's been resistance, people saying, everybody's on a pill, we're just gonna treat ourselves on a pill. We really try to explain the science at the community level so that everybody understands what do we mean by science behind U is equal to U. And then we look at our plan and intervention, and then we do a profile of that community so that if there's a clinic of people who are lost to follow, if there's people in the healthcare facility who are not adhering to treatment, if there are people in that community associated to that, but they actually understand the profile, and then we map the partners. Everybody is flying very high. I'm funded by CDC, I'm funded by PEPFAR, I'm funded by Global Fund. If you cannot find expression within the mapping of partners at a community level, then you're not making an impact at all. So we want to see partners being represented at a community level, and that's why we feel like we come up with a plan where we strategize and then we report on activities on a quarterly basis. Just, I skipped a slide. I'm 37 years old, but I've never felt so technologically disadvantaged. I always feel like I'm young, but today I'm not. So this is the conversation map that really our IAPAC local support official has really drilled into us as civil society in all of our 18 sectors, in all of our partners. We've really went through it, and Shalon, we didn't like this in the beginning. We really thought you were just making us feel like children, but we really felt like, now it's creating a conversation. And you'll begin to see that there are cards that will come there as if we are playing the game. There's fact about that. Why should people be on treatment? And there'll also be reasons that we play within those cards. And then successfully we get to U is equal to U. And we use this as a conversation map at community level, including local healthcare facility managers working together with civil society, ordinary citizens, and they get to talk about the pandemic. And then the mayor as well, as part of Fast Track Cities, joins those conversations to talk about why should everybody be healthy in this ward, and what does it mean for everybody to be healthy in that ward. I'm almost done. I know I have a verbal diarrhea. U is equal to U. We have a long way to go. We still need a lot of support. We still need to mainstream all the resources. We still need to put all partners into one category and make sure that we fight this. This picture alone, that we still have 28% of our HIV transmittable, means that we still have a problem. But we're working very hard to make sure that everybody that lives in the city of eThekwini knows their HIV status, and those who know their HIV status get to be on treatment. And we really talk about the benefits of why you should be on treatment. Last but not least, this is our Ward 8 committee membership. It's got community leadership. The chair is the ward councillor. The deputy chair is civil society, elected by sectors. We've got ward committee rep. We've got traditional leadership. Because we come from a very traditional community where everything is not so westernized as we may think it is, let me bring it to you and put it to you that we've got traditional authorities in these communities, Izinduna, Amakosi, who sometimes they become the barrier to people getting treatment. So sensitizing them and making sure that they feel part of the structure and part of the response is actually one way that we're using it. All government are part of it. Department of Health, Department of Social Development, Education, and these are our sectors that are represented in all based on the SANEC recommendation. And in eThekwini, I'm not going to lie here because we're sitting in Spain, we don't have 18 sectors. We only got 16 functional sectors. We're still lagging behind with disability sector, but we've worked very hard to go and mobilize people who live with disabilities. And just recently we got interfaith, because we got religious leaders, but we realized that people believe in different things. Then we decided to call it interfaith and bring everybody on board. This is the mayor having a conversation. This is our mayor. I'm sure you've seen this slide a number of times. This is a political leader who's well respected in the province. But he goes down into the community with our PLHIV leader and the ward council, and they discuss the conversation map. And we've got these beads that we've put to explain viral load suppression and what does it mean to be virally suppressed, what does it mean not to be virally suppressed, and they get to discuss it. And really thanks to our partners who are funded by CDC, USAID, also TBK, who have decided to take this and say, we're going to create hubs in the community where these conversations are not only going to take place when there's a political leadership, but it's going to be a community activist peer education program that is going to be led throughout the district. Work training in action. Number of trainings that we've done so far. without funding, nobody gave us money to do this. This is what IAPEC has taught us, that we don't need to wait for donors. And we're going to finish all 111 training of these wards without funding. Whether we get a sandwich, whether we get a juice, whether we get oros, we're just going to get together and get to do this work. Zones, we've trained 4, and the number of trainees, it's 280 up to date. I think technology. I think that was the last slide. Okay, conclusion, very important. Oh my God, very important. Working to complete a train the trainer program, where now we want to make sure that we're going to have this online, we're going to have this on tablet, we're going to have this as a hardcore document and creating. We've created a lot of prototypes to make sure that this training is not just sitting with one person. We want to disseminate it for everybody, and then planning to scale up and complete all in the next 3 months. Work training is provided to be an effective vehicle to promote Operation Sukumasake to ensure service delivery. Participants demonstrated better understanding of their role to end AIDS by 2030, which is our goal. Local leaders such as ward councillors, ward committee members have showed interest and understanding of the city's response to HIV through the multi-stakeholder district implementation plan. And also the multi-sectoral response became more clear, better understood by supporting at partner and as well as local level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Siabunga. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said earlier, he has to catch a flight, so I'm opening the floor for any questions that you may have for him at this time before he leaves. Any questions? No? Maybe so? He was really good, right? All right. Siabunga, thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. And showing the leadership of community in eThekwini. The next presenter that we have is Ian Jackson, learning from London's HIV elimination efforts to improve community leadership and partnership across health system. Please make him welcome.
Okay. Hello? Nope. Hello? Hello, can people hear me all right? Excellent. I'm hoping there's a slide deck. If there isn't a slide deck, you're going to listen to me talk anyway, because, I mean, you've been looking at slides for 3 days. Is slides, oh no, you do have to. Okay, so I'm a commissioning director for the National Health Service in England, in London specifically. I have overarching responsibility, along with my colleagues, for a budget of £5 billion a year across 143 different services. That sounds like a lot. It is a lot, but my job is not discretionarily funding £5 billion. There is a request against that £5 billion of about £5.2 billion, so my job is trying to keep the economy at £5 billion. That's important because around the margins of very large health budgets like that, you can do an awful lot of good, which is what we've tried to do here. And this is all about leveraging the community in London and harnessing their spirit, really, to get to elimination of HIV. So we've had this extraordinary progress since our first reports of AIDS in the 80s. We think in London we have about 1,600 undiagnosed people. 8,000 people may have transmissible levels of HIV, and we've got high levels of stigma and discrimination. But this is a programme to try and get to the end of the epidemic. So the question we asked ourselves was, how could we be the first city in the world to get to zero? And what would that take? And we know that U equals U, so we've got the science, we've got the implementation, we've got free drugs irrespective of where you come from. That's a given in England. And we're very lucky to have that. But what we don't know is how to get to zero. No one knows how to get to zero, no one's done it. And so we thought about this problem in a slightly different way, which is our community sector in London is born out of tragedy, it's born out of advocacy, it's born out of LGBTQ rights. And the people, some of whom are in this room, are amazing. The people who work in that sector are amazing. So we thought, and what I do is I sit in an office looking after a big budget, And so I don't know how to get to zero. It's my job, but I don't know. So why don't we ask? And why don't we properly partner with our voluntary sector in a completely different way? So we managed to get some funding, and we ended up getting £6 million in total for Fast Track Cities over 3 years, but £3 million specifically I asked to be used for this improvement collaborative. And we specifically funded the voluntary sector, which is a very unusual thing for the National Health Service in England to do, to run these projects. And I got quite a lot of abuse from my medical colleagues for doing that, because they were sort of saying, well, yeah, but if you give us the money, we could do wonderful things. And I was like, well, but I know all your finance directors, and if I give you the money, you'll never see it. If we give it to the voluntary sector, if we give it to the charity sector, they'll have to use it and account for it. So these 12, we have 12 projects that we selected in the end. And these are the logos of the organisation that run those projects. And the projects vary from peer support to a programme that deals with people who have people living with HIV who are lonely. Because actually getting to zero is not about just the medication. The medication bit we're really good at. We have a fantastic medical sector. This is all about how do you treat people and not conditions. We talk about whole person care all the time, but what does it mean? And I think it means this. It means asking people how they would like to be treated and following through and putting the power in the hands of the people who can do that and taking it away from the health service a bit. But not entirely. So we made everyone do quality improvement as a methodology. So we got a lot of charity organisations and we funded, they're not grants because it was a 3-year funding term. That was really important to give security of status because actually we didn't want a new bidding round every time. We wanted to give some surety and we let them define their own metrics, so their own quality improvement measures, and we learnt as much from the ones that didn't work as that did. And we built in the idea that if a project tried something, as long as we thought it was trying the right sort of things and it didn't work, that was fine. We learnt from that, we move on to the next thing until we get to zero. That's how it works. And we also brought all the projects together. So these charities are not all natural sort of allies necessarily, but within the room and the context, it was quite clear that they all had to work together and they could all, because none of them really knew how to do quality improvement, we could teach everyone at the same time and they could help and learn together and critique each other's projects and move them on. So we gave them freedom, funding and support. And we're now 3 years into the collaborative, or 2.5 years into the collaborative. We were interrupted clearly by COVID. And this is a small fraction of the things that this collaborative has been able to achieve. So you know I said I have a £5 billion budget that I work on with my colleagues on. This £1 million, across all the years I've ever done anything, this £1 million a year is the best value £1 million I have ever spent on anything in my life on behalf of the health service. And you can see here from what we've managed to achieve. So there's lots of testing, and now London is doing opt-out testing everywhere, and that's possible because the whole community is in fast-track cities. We don't do it, I said it earlier, we don't do anything without the community saying we can and being an active partner and driving some of those decisions. So opt-out testing happened not because of the government, but because the community lobbied politicians who then ordered us to free up the money, but it's because we'd started these programs. So we have buses from Doctors of the World and the GMI Metro Partnership who go around testing people in areas of high prevalence, but now we also test across every ED. We have a project that helps people claim their benefits they're entitled to. So why aren't you medicating? Because I can't claim my benefits. Well, we've secured £1 million worth of benefits for people through the Positive East project that Gary runs. Peer mentoring is we're looking to now take the learning and embed all this as we go on. 1,800 people have been supported through this programme. And also we split the programme as we ran it into some projects around testing, some around making sure people were adhering to medication, and some about just making sure people could have a better life. And that working out ways for people to have a better life is really, I mean, it's really inspiring to watch those groups. COVID hit, and we suddenly had a loneliness project that could help people who had HIV who were lonely, and it exploded in a brilliant way. And they were doing art therapy and music therapy and things that are not the usual projects that we would do through health services. And it worked because people living with HIV designed and ran those projects. That's why it worked. It worked because we gave over some of that control and gave the framework of the stuff that we are good at to the charities to make it work. They're targeted and personalised services, so they're all about the individual person and their wider health need, and that's really, really important for us. And we have got collaboration across the NHS. We talk about it a lot, but there isn't a better example of collaboration in the NHS with London councils, with the voluntary sector, with the Mayor of London's office than Fast Track Cities. And that's what Fast Track Cities sort of did for us. It enabled us to say, well, there's this thing that we could be part of. It didn't, obviously it doesn't give us any money, that would be great, but it doesn't do that. But it gave us a way to do things that we could all point at and go, look, lots of people sign up to this. It's an international community. So how can we try and take a lead and show people what we can do? Again, wider partners are influenced. So we've got a FaithWorks project that goes into mosques and churches and synagogues, which again is a very unusual thing for the NHS and a health system to commission that's just used to dealing with things on a single line issue. So in terms of what we're going to do next with this, each new diagnosis saves the NHS, we think it might be £100,000, but £140,000 was the last done before the sort of changing in pricing of some of the drugs. But every time we find a new person living with HIV who wasn't aware of their status, we think we save at least £100,000. The opt-out testing programme has been in place for 3 or 4 months and we've found 120 people already. So it's making money back into the health economy, which is, we're looking to reinvest in another improvement collaborative. Because in the 3 years we've moved on, we would want another improvement collaborative at the end of this one, which is April, but we wouldn't want the same projects because our whole positioning has shifted. But the process and the QI and helping people live their best lives is going to be absolutely central if we do get further funding to do this again. We think as well, this is a real blueprint for how you should run not just HIV or hepatitis services, but all services, because these programs are about how you look after people and not how you look after a condition with a medical response in a kind of quite old-fashioned way. And again, we talk about that a lot. I really want to emphasise it. We talk about whole person care a lot. We hardly ever do it. This is exactly what that is. And we want to embed peer support into every clinic in the NHS. Every clinic in London, you should be diagnosed and immediately be speaking to someone who lives with HIV. And as I say, it led to this routine HIV in ED programme, which is causing referrals back into the projects and creating a virtuous circle. So that is it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ian, for that. If you're just joining in the room, we're asking that you go first to the end. It's late today, and I just want everybody to get in their presentation. So if you have, the questions will be accepted at the end. The next presenter is Diego Garcia Marcelo. He'll be presenting on the evaluation of a peer intervention program in the hospital setting to improve people newly diagnosed with HIV, health-related quality of life. Over to you, Diego.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm Diego Garcia. I'm the director of an NGO based here in Seville. It's called ADARA, Sevilla Checkpoint. And we run a lot of projects, and maybe the one that defines us the best is the peer education program that we've been doing in hospital setting since 2004. At the beginning, obviously, it wasn't even in the hospital. It was in a car outside the hospital where we provided support to people living with HIV. But after time and after years and the doctors and the nurses getting to know us, finally we got into the hospital with the help of the head of the infectious disease unit at the time, Popello Viciana. And then the project began to grow, and now we are present in the 3 public hospitals of the city, where we have 3 peer educators that are from the beginning, since everyone is, there's a new diagnosis, they are all the time with that person, accompanying and giving advice in anything that that person may need. We all agree that peer education is very important, and sometimes I've been challenged when I've been in other congresses. I remember a few years ago saying, okay, we all agree that this is very important, that changes people's lives, that, you know, it improves quality of life, but we don't have scientific, or we don't have studies that prove that. So although we believe in peer support, but we've always lacked that kind of scientific numbers or scientific studies that can see as an example of our success. So we decided, with the help of a Positive Action Europe grant, to run this evaluation of our interventions in the hospital setting, of peer interventions, and see what the results were, to try to give, some scientific numbers into that perception we had that, there was an important increase in quality of life. So, we all agree that, antiretroviral therapy has increased life expectancy. That's for clear. But to what HIV still impacts, a lot the quality of life, anxiety, depression, stigma. These are, among other factors, those who are influencing coping with the health process. So supporting people with HIV to deal with all that situation is a key element in infection management. Peer support is recognized as important for this purpose. And the existing, because there have been some meta-analysis, the existing scientific data support the effectiveness of peer education in health programs. It is, in the meta-analysis, especially effective in the provision of social support, because it increases skills in listening, sharing stories, giving hope, helping to increase self-esteem. It's also effective for providing instrumental support, such as assistance with medical and bureaucratic care formalities. It is good for providing information and advice. For example, it improves adherence and healthy habits. And finally, it's very useful for promoting affiliation, increases contact with other people. So all that is what appears, in previous meta-analysis. But we wanted to see if specifically, this peer intervention could serve as increasing quality of life. In Spain, there was a previous study with 240 interventions. Let me see if I can show you here. This is a prospective randomized trial that what it did, it was two arms. People newly diagnosed was either randomized to have support by healthcare practitioners or by peers. And the results of that study in Spain with 240 came to that in both arms there was improvement in adherence and healthy habits, but in the peer intervention arm there was less emotional distress. So with all this background, what we did was to design this study. You can see here it was 43. It was new diagnosis. In Sevilla city, we have around 80 new diagnoses a year in the city. So we managed to get 43 to get into the study. Of those 80, most of them are men, which corresponds with our epidemic, because the epidemic in this city is mainly driven by men who have sex with men. That's why most of them were homosexual, and most of them were in a sexual relationship. The methodology was a quasi-experimental single-group design. It was designed in 4 sessions. First, session 1 at the moment of diagnosis. The session 2 with the peer educator was when the results were collected, the blood analysis and antiretroviral therapy began. Session 3 was 1 month after the start of antiretroviral therapy. And the last session, session 4, was 4 months after antiretroviral therapy. There were independent variable, which was the interventions themselves, and there were 3 dependent variables. The 3 dependent variables were the quality of life, assessing the quality of life of people. It was also the psychological predictors of quality of life. And I forgot to put here also clinical measures, because we also tried to find if there were any clinical significance in the interventions. We used ANOVA and ANCOVA analysis to see the results. So let me show you what we found. Okay, these are some of the results. As you can see, there was an evolution, a positive and significant evolution in all predictors. In all health-related quality of life dimensions. You can see here. And they were clinically significant. Statistically significant. Regarding psychological predictors, there was improvement in psychological health, social relationships, overall health perception, but not in avoidant coping. So that was the only psychological predictor where we didn't have an improvement. And to our surprise, regarding clinical data, what we found that there was an improvement in those people who had interventions between CD4 cell counts and the ratio CD4-CD8. Also, in a very important, that was a surprise to us. We didn't count that there was going to be also such an increase in their immunological response. Conclusions of this, it's a small study because our epidemiology is small, but I think it sets, a good path to keep on investigating and creating, evidence on the importance of peer support. The results showed a positive evolutions in all dimensions of health-related quality of life, a large change in health perception, both in physical health and psychological health and environmental health. The change was moderate to high in social and spiritual relationship dimensions, which measure existential issues relevant to people with HIV, processes such as stigma, concern about the future and death. And those correlate with other studies, and this was the dimension where the participants scored the lowest. A positive change in most of the measured quality of life predictors was also found after the intervention. There was a strong reduction in risk predictors of quality of life, such as dissatisfaction with sexuality, negative disease representation, perceived and internalized stigma, depressive mood, and emotional loneliness. The results showed that the improvement in psychological health and social relationships resulting from the peer intervention was associated with immune recovery. That was the surprise that we found. This peer intervention assessment study increases the evidence of the effectiveness of a peer intervention in the field of positive prevention. Moreover, the intervention carried out is structured and designed according to the existing evidence on the protective and risk factors of quality of life. In sum, we think that this study represents an important advance in the area of evaluation of peer intervention programs for positive prevention in hospital settings and we have sent it to several papers, to several journals, and they are being reviewed now to be published. So we think, in short, we will have the publication either in, you will have the complete, the complete manuscript. It will be published either in AIDS and Behavior or in other of the area. So thank you very much for your
Thank you very much, Diego. Our next presenter is Camille Willing, Building Bridges, Use of HIV/STI Services and Gender-Affirming Care for Transgender and Gender-Diverse Communities in Amsterdam at an NGO Public Health co-led clinic. Please make him welcome.
Thank you very much. Is this working? Yes? Okay. My name is Camille Welling. I'm working for the Amsterdam Public Health Center as medical supervisor of the trans clinic. And in the past year, 2021, we started as the Public Health Center a collaboration with a trans community organization to offer HIV and STI services together with hormone support. And I am going to shortly, briefly tell you more about this. The reason why, in 2016, already the Lancet published a whole edition around transgender health and actually the lack of articles about transgender health. They mentioned in 2016 there were only 200 articles published around transgender health issues and needs, whereas there is millions and millions of articles published in all scientific magazines or the journals, yes. In the years after, there has been many improvement of more scientific research in the, for the trans community, but not always taking in regards what the needs are of the community. What we did in, there's missing, oh, there we go. I have the same struggles with the electronics. What we did in Amsterdam, Trans United Europe is one of the trans community organizations. They exist already since 2013, and in 2018, the Trans United Europe group started a community-led clinic where they provided hormone support for the trans community, especially those who can't reach regular hormone support. However, Trans United expressed that they struggle to get the acceptance from the medical world. Their clinic was fully led by the trans community, so the doctor, the nurse, the social workers, and they noticed that they can't give the support that they want to give to the community without having more acceptance within the medical world. And they reached out to us as a public health center, and of course there was the strong desire from the Public Health Center of Amsterdam also to get more connection with the trans community. So the Center for Sexual Health of Amsterdam started this collaboration. We used PNG 292 as one of the locations. PNG 292 is a health center specifically for sex workers. And because there was quite of an overlap with the Trans United focus group servicing the sex workers community, that was seen as the most ideal location to start our services collaboratively. So Trans United made sure that they had the network, that they provide the safety and acceptance for the community that needed most. The Center for Sexual Health made sure that we can offer sexual health services, expand our health services when it comes to hormone support, and PNG could offer also support from social work perspective in regards to maybe people needing support with registration for sex work, or if they want to quit sex work, how to make those steps, but also they have a lot of information about support with housing, homelessness, etc. In the time that followed, actually more groups joined us, so we also work together with the police. We have a police division, pink and blue, which makes it safe for community members to file complaints or file reports when they are being harassed, when they're being violated, and especially for those people that feel like they are marginalized or feel like they don't have a say or a place to be in this world, where they are worried that because of their undocumented status or because of them doing sex work or them using drugs, that they might not get the safe support from police. And with this collaboration together, we see actually how we can reach, even at more levels, the support that the community actually needs. For now, what I want to present is actually what we've done in this short time. So we use a community-based location. One location is what I mentioned before, the healthcare center for sex workers, but also nowadays we make use of the trans safe space in Amsterdam, which is a living room situation where trans community comes together. It is an anonymous location, so it's not on the internet, so that people from the community find each other, but also feel safe, that they're not being fetishized or being harassed. It's really a safe space for the community. Our team that offers the healthcare services is very important, that it's a predominantly queer and trans team, so that the trans community stands at the front. They are the leaders also in what the community needs. And we offer hormone support because that's actually the main question from the community. And HIV and STI testing is mandatory. No, it's not mandatory, it's voluntary. So it is offered to people, and if they feel safe to do HIV, STI testing, they can, but it's also perfectly fine to not have HIV and STI testing. Some people also don't have the risks or needs for HIV, STI testing. Some people still feeling very insecure about their bodies and not being sexually active. But a lot of situations we also notice that people still need to trust the doctor and nurses first and are worried about, okay, if I do an STI test, do I need to undress for the doctor? Or actually finding out in a later stage that we only do self-test, or ideally do self-testing, and unless there is symptoms that we might do a physical examination. So those barriers that they initially had to do HIV and STI testing become low because they start to trust the team. They see that Trans United trusts us as a team and want to collaborate with us. And because we use these safe spaces, they also hear more from each other or see, oh, actually, this is something that I also need. I'm only presenting now some descriptive statistics from the last year, January till December 2021, because we started our collaboration in January, so we have a nice full year to describe. But I can already tell you that in the first 6 months of 2022, we already doubled our numbers in inclusions, and we see an enormous growth. In the first year, we actually started with just 1 day a month where we used the locations and saw so many demands, so many questions from the community wanting hormone support, wanting psychosocial support, wanting HIV and STI testing, that we increased it to once weekly, having our consultations. So just some results. We saw 75 unique visitors in 2021. The majority is trans feminine, 85 individuals, 77% of the community. 75 unique visitors doesn't, of course, mean that there were only 75 visits. Some of them came multiple times. Actually, the majority came multiple times. And the region of birth, for us, it was especially important to reach those people that are marginalized for multiple reasons. So we didn't want to be a center for trans people that already have access to regular hormone support at their gender team or at the hospital, but especially those that feel like they don't have a space in the healthcare system or know that they actually can't access the healthcare system. So an example of people that are included in care with us are undocumented people that always think that they can't have access to care, people that are in an asylum center or in asylum procedure, people that do sex work, a lot of time because of the fear that they might be judged or stigmatized because of the work that they do, and people that struggle with houselessness or homelessness. And we see actually the majority of the community that visits us is a migrant not coming from the Netherlands, and also the 9 people or the 12% that was born in the Netherlands. At least one parent was born outside of the Netherlands. So actually all migrants or children of migrants that visited our clinic, and also through the support of Trans United. Is that a good way of reaching people that may have not reached our community, our Center for Sexual Health before? Actually, we see that almost 75% or 76% actually never had a consultation at our clinic, at our STI HIV clinic in the past 5 years. So that shows that some of them know how to find us, but many of them had never had a HIV test with us. That doesn't mean that they never had a HIV test or never had a STI test, but they weren't familiar with the system as we offer it. When we ask about, okay, what kind of barriers of care do you experience? I see that the percentages have fallen away, so these are absolute numbers. 40% had a refugee or asylum seekers background, 25 people, so that is about 33%, has a history of sex work, the majority still being active as sex worker, but some of them doing sex work up until recently. Because it was also starting during Corona time, some had stopped their sex work activities. We also ask about language barriers, because we do notice that sometimes people just don't know how to find care because they don't speak the language. Those who couldn't do their consultation in Dutch or English, we also made a note of that, which was about 20%. In those situations, we either use a medical interpreter telephone, so someone can give those explanations, but our team also has a background of different languages because we're such a diverse team, so we either speak Spanish, Turkish, Italian, French, and a new member who speaks Arabic. And then also from the groups that we saw less of, undocumented and house or homeless, we do see in 2022 that actually once you've seen one person from a certain community, that they also tell their peers, and actually we get more people that are undocumented or from the homeless shelters that now send us an email. What did we see as results? The uptake, so how many people actually wanted to have a test, that was higher among the trans feminine visitors. So trans feminine is those that were assigned male at birth, but identify either as a trans woman or non-binary towards the feminine side. So 63% of them made use of our HIV/STI services. The testing was especially high among refugees and those who reported sex work, and a lot of those who reported sex work also enrolled in the services of the Sex Workers Healthcare Center, including access to PrEP, access to hepatitis B vaccinations, and regular checkups, and making use of the psychosocial services. We did not find any new HIV diagnoses, but there was 13% among the trans feminine visitors that already reported being positive, and if needed, we helped them find the access to care in the Netherlands so that they could continue their ART uninterrupted. We did find 1 acute hepatitis B infection and 15 bacterial STIs among 44 individuals that were screened during 77 visits. And the acute hepatitis B infection, that was an undocumented trans woman from Asia who was so scared to go to the hospital, because we usually refer people onwards to make sure that their liver support and testing is done appropriately. And she was so afraid that she might be deported or that a doctor wouldn't be safe for her, that our team together, one of the people from Trans United said, okay, if you're so afraid, we'll go together to show you that no one will harm you and that we actually have the best care for you available. And I think that was an important example of how we can take those extra steps, because otherwise people might disappear again under the radar just out of fear. And we understand the fear, and we know that we have a responsibility to lower those barriers and make people trust the healthcare system again. So in conclusion, although it was just our first year that we collaborated, we do see that offering combined hormone therapy, HIV/STI services with strong community involvement can seem a successful way to reach marginalized trans and gender diverse communities for STI testing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Camille. Our next presenter is Julian Alexander Nunes, implementation of a municipal strategy on HIV and vulnerable populations in the municipality, excuse me, of Madrid region 2021. Please make him welcome.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. I'm going to present this project on the strategy on a medium-sized city in the Madrid region on HIV and key population. Alcorcón is this one in red. In this region in green, the region is the region of Madrid, because of most of the public health competencies and the healthcare competencies in Spain are from the autonomous region. It was important to us to the participation of the autonomous region of Madrid. Also because it's very close to Madrid city in the center. That is a very big city, the capital, and most of the resources are concentrated there. It was important to us also to have the participation of these resources. Well, before starting last year, this was what we had. The last report on HIV from the region of Madrid was from 2017, and Alcorcón was among the higher incidence of HIV in the region. The first, of course, is Madrid city. Also, about the resources in the municipality, the only one, permanent or fixed, was the Red Cross, not others in these issues. Then, with that in mind, we do these 4 steps. First one, the adherence of Alcorcón to the Paris Declaration and the Fast Track Initiative, to have a base strength to starting to work, to avoid these accelerated campaigns without a real impact. Then contact different agents to try to form an intersectoral network with the autonomous region, with the resources in the Madrid city, and others. Then to know the baseline HIV status in the city and set the main goals to set the main activities. Well, the proposal of the adherence were done in the plenary of the city, and it was approved, fortunately, for all political parties. And then the signing was formalized with the participation of the IAPAC, the AIDS plan, the Autonomous Region of Madrid, and the Hospital of Alcorcón, that is the only hospital in the city. Then we contact different agents. We have a very great response with these 2 meetings this year with resources in different levels, here from national, regional, and local level. Sorry. This one?
Forward.
Okay. And as you can see here, the public health of agency of the Madrid region, and different civil and community resources from Madrid, like Apoyo Positivo, COGAN Tarizal, LGBT Association from the region of Madrid, Imagina Más, among others. With the support of the Madrid region surveillance, we established the incidence and the demographic characteristics of the population, the new diagnosis of HIV, with almost 10 new diagnoses per 100,000 inhabitants, for about around 15 new diagnoses a year. The demographic characteristics are similar to the rest of Madrid region and Spain, and the big challenge of the late diagnosis that maybe is even worse than in the region of Madrid. And about 100 or more people living with HIV in the city. Most of them with follow-up in the hospital. That is what's important to us to establish the 95 targets, to know how it's achieved at the moment. With that in mind, we proposed with the group the main goals and actions in that way, focusing in the first link and the last link. This one because it is the area where the municipality have more competencies in the promotion and prevention, also because of the very high late diagnosis, then the prevention and testing was very, very important for the project. And because the intermediate targets are better achieved in general in Spain because of very good healthcare. When the people are diagnosed, almost all receive treatment, and it's a good treatment and have follow-up, then have a good adherence. And then with those two objectives, it was proposed the zone of the action at different levels, at political, institutional, as we said before, at the population level, and in a specific group like vulnerable population and educational actions. Then we have some of them, this one at the political level, this one here, working in collaboration with Madrid region and other departments of the city, like culture, youth, the Addiction Care Center, among others, with one-off campaigns. Also established some fixed center for testing. This one from the Red Cross that have other device for improving adherence, and a new one in collaboration with the Madrid region. Also some activities on dissemination, visibility, and awareness. This one, for example, in all these issues in collaboration with this community, mainly community resources on the radio, local radio, and on the news. And this one in specific populations. We have this one in population with very low adherence. Mainly people with addictive problems and very hard to locate them. Then with the Unidad Móvil de Cribado, there is an association who work with these populations in their settings, with the Red Cross and the Addiction Center of the municipality and the Alcorcón Hospital. We achieve, generate a circuit with very low steps to locate them, test them, diagnose them, receive the treatment. Also in the educational, some changes in the actions of the city in the schools, educative centers. Sorry. Bueno, thank you.
Thank you very much, Julian. We are moving the conversation online, and we have two presenters that are online that are going to be sharing with us. We're close to the end, ladies and gentlemen, and the first one is Calvin. Calvin, you're there. If you're there, just let's wave or something of that sort. And Calvin's presentation today, ladies and gentlemen, is on community influence on end the epidemic plans in the US fast-track cities. Calvin, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Like George just said, my presentation is on community influence on end the HIV epidemic plans in the US fast-track cities. My name is Calvin Pugh, and I'm the Senior Advisor on Community Engagement for IAPAC. See if I can move my slides here. There we go. My fellow authors, Corey and Dr. Jose Zuniga, as most of you are well aware, we work for IAPAC and the Fast Track Cities Institute. So, the Ending the HIV Epidemic initiative was launched in 2019 by the US Department of Health and Human Services, with the goal of reducing new HIV infections by 90% by 2030. EHE presently includes 57 local areas, including 48 counties, and the cities of San Juan, Puerto Rico. The CDC has noted that it is committed to ongoing, meaningful community engagement in EHE, including the local areas' development of locally tailored, community-driven plans. Now, there's 48 counties, Washington, D.C., and San Juan, Puerto Rico, were identified for their disproportionate amount of new HIV diagnosis. 7 states were identified for their disproportionate rural burden of HIV. Now, there's significant overlap between the EHE jurisdictions and US fast-track cities, with 21 of the cities in North America either a county or in a state that is a priority jurisdiction. So, what did we do? From January to March of 2022, we fielded a survey of people living with HIV in EHE priority jurisdictions to gauge the community engagement in the development of EHE plans and community perception of EHE's success to date. An online survey was created and distributed across the Fast Track Cities network, which is significant overlap, like I said, with the EHE jurisdictions, as well as via social media and virtual snowball sampling, in which participants were encouraged to share the survey with others. The survey mainly utilized Likert scale options plus 3 open-ended open response questions to gauge opinions of the EHE process. We asked the open-ended questions were assessed using an informal qualitative analysis, and the study was granted an IRB waiver by Pearl IRB. So of our respondents, in total, 121 individuals qualified for the survey after excluding those who were not living with HIV or not living within an EHE jurisdiction. Of those respondents, 56% of them resided within a fast-track city. Now, of those respondents, 58% of the individuals were over the age of 55 years old, with 15% of respondents in the 45 to 54 range and 17 in the 25 to 34 range, with other ages making up smaller percentages. 74% identified as male, with 22% identified as female, and 5% who identified as non-binary or another identity outside of the gender binary. And 6% of the individuals identified as transgender. 53% of our respondents identified as a racial minority, with 33% Black or African American, 20% Hispanic or Latinx, with 41% identifying as white. When asked about the length of time from their HIV diagnosis, 72% had been living with HIV for more than 10 years. 16% 2 to 5 years, and 11% 6 to 10. 2% said they were living with HIV for less than 1 year. When asked about their involvement in advocacy of any form, such as peer education, patient navigation, or planning bodies, 62% said they were involved in some form of HIV advocacy. Now, we wanted to really measure what the awareness of both the initiative itself and of the requirement for local jurisdictions to create their own individual plans. 73% said they were very or somewhat aware of the EHE initiative, with only 27 saying they reported they didn't know very much or were not aware at all. 63% of their respondents said they were involved in, they were aware of the requirement for each jurisdiction to have its own plan. Now, despite high awareness of EHE plans and requirements for individual jurisdictional plans, only 35% of the respondents participated in their state or local county planning. With only 45% of individuals attended a local listening session, and only 46% knew of someone else who did. When we utilized the open-ended questions, we asked participants of the listening and planning session who attended the listening and planning sessions, what their thoughts were after the sessions. Utilizing a thematic analysis, the largest recurring theme was the need for greater community engagement. Additionally, we asked participants if they felt they had been able to influence their local EHE plan. With 59% only 59% of those who took the survey said they felt they had had influence. When asked if respondents had felt their community had been meaningfully engaged, it was nearly split in half, but with 51% saying no, they did not feel that their community was meaningfully engaged. The last question we asked before the last opening ending question was, we asked them whether they felt, regardless if they were able to give input, with the current EHE local plans would meet the needs of their community, with 59% saying they were not adequate. And in the last opening question, we asked how county or local state EHE plans could better meet the needs of the communities. Again, using a thematic analysis, the overwhelming recurring theme was the need to engage more people living with HIV in the plans and better communication of the initiative to the wider community. So, in conclusion, despite the respondent group being more inclined to participate in HIV advocacy and likely to have stronger ties to local planning groups, they did not feel that their influence on current EHE plans met the needs of their communities. Overall, the results demonstrate the need for additional outreach and engagement with local communities to continue to participate and monitor EHE planning at the local level. This is particularly true given that the study had a natural bias towards people engaged in activism, a trend that proved particularly true among Black and Latinx participants, meaning that the average person living with HIV likely felt considerably less informed and engaged than those who participated in the study. The results demonstrate, the results suggest that a deeper understanding of community concerns, only brought about by meaningful community engagement, is needed to strengthen stakeholders' confidence in EHE planning, in the initiative, its effectiveness to address community needs. And that's my content. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Calvin. And finally, but no means the least, our next presenter is Sindhu Ravishankar. And accessing the HIV 95 targets in 5 fast-track cities. Sindhu, it's now over to you. You're on mute.
Thanks so much, Jamoki. Let me just share my screen. Okay, thanks so much, Jamoki. So my presentation is on children living with HIV, assessing the 95 targets in 5 fast-track cities. My name is Sindhu Ravishankar, and I'm the Vice President of Programs and Research at the Fast Track Cities Institute, which is housed in the International Association of Providers of AIDS Care. So we know that children living with HIV globally fare worse off across the HIV care continua and the 95 treatment targets compared to adult populations. We have global data that that does demonstrate this. So in 2021 globally, 75% of people living with HIV were accessing ART, but for children under the age of 15, only 52% were on ART. So there's a need to really understand, not only at national level, but municipal level as well, and city level, where are the gaps when it comes to children living with HIV? So the purpose of this, it was a data assessment. The purpose of this assessment was just to look at what data are out there for cities and children living with HIV, and children living with HIV is defined as those who are under the age of 15. And look at where some of the existing gaps might be and existing progress might be as well since 2015. So we included 5 cities in this assessment: Bangkok, Etequini or Durban, Kingston, Nairobi, and Sao Paulo. And really these cities were selected based on availability of data. So the hope is that, you know, in the near future that we'd be able to do this kind of assessment, including a much larger number of fast-track cities. So we looked specifically at the second and third 95 targets among children living with HIV compared to all people living with HIV. And all people living with HIV includes both adults and children. We looked at the second 95, of course, as most of you know, it's the proportion of people living with HIV and ART among the diagnosed children living with HIV. And then we also looked at the third 95, which is the proportion of virally suppressed among those who are on ART. These data they came from a variety of sources, but they were all reported directly from fast-track cities between 2018 and 2021. And we also had 2 cities, Bangkok and Sao Paulo, that had trend data from 2015 to 2020 in Bangkok and 2015 to 2021 in Sao Paulo. So we could also see the incremental changes from year to year for children living with HIV as compared to all people living with HIV. I just want to share some of the limitations because, as we all know, data aren't always perfect. But in Kingston and Bangkok, linkage to care was used as a proxy for diagnosed people living with HIV and children living with HIV. And this is because there was not a data reported for diagnosed children living with HIV. In Etequini, the third 95 or viral suppression target for PLHIV and CLHIV was defined as those virally suppressed among those who have access to viral load tests. And this is due to, in many cities actually, there not being 100% viral load coverage or viral load testing coverage. So this metric was altered a bit. And then also want to point out that when we're looking at the data trends for Bangkok and Sao Paulo, which is, you know, looking at 6 and 7 years of data respectively, it doesn't account for any changes in the data due to update or improved methodologies. So when there are smaller changes in the data, just to take that with a grain of salt, because it could also be due to some smaller changes in the actual methodologies or reporting of the data. So when we're looking at children living with HIV and total PLHIV in these 5 cities, we see that with the second 95 treatment target, CLHIV fared approximately the same as all PLHIV in one city, and that's in Nairobi city. So we see that there's 100% of CLHIV on treatment versus 99% in the total population. CLHIV fared better than all PLHIV in one city, and this was by 35 percentage points. So in Kingston, actually, CLHIV are doing better in terms of treatment coverage opposed to like the total population. However, in 3 of the cities, in Bangkok, Etequini, and Sao Paulo, CLHIV fared worse than all PLHIV in 3 cities. There was a pretty significant gap as well. So we see in Bangkok, 77% of PLHIV are on treatment compared to 54% for children. At the Queenie, we see that 80% of the total population is on treatment compared to 58% of children living with HIV. And then in Sao Paulo, we see that 88% of all PLHIV are on treatment compared to 71% of children living with HIV. And then when we looked at the third 95 treatment target, actually children living with HIV fared worse compared to PLHIV in all 5 cities. And here again, there's a pretty large gap. We look at, for example, in Kingston, the total population has 72% viral suppression compared to 29% among children. We see in Bangkok, there was 98% of the total population virally suppressed as opposed to 70% among children. And you'll see the different percentage point differences between all PLHIV compared to children living with HIV listed here. Then when we were looking at the trend data in Bangkok and Sao Paulo, we saw that not only did children living with HIV consistently fare worse compared to all people living with HIV across the years, but the incremental improvements from year to year were less or worse among children living with HIV compared to all PLHIV. So looking at Bangkok, this is from 2015 to 2020, and we're looking at both the second 95 and third 95 for people living with HIV and children living with HIV. And when we look at PLHIV from baseline to current, so that's from 2015 to 2020, we see that there has been an increase or an improvement of 25 percentage points. In 2015, we had 52% of PLHIV on treatment compared to 77% in 2020. And in the third 95 target, there was an improvement of 20 percentage points between baseline in 2015 and current 2020. So we increased from 78% of PLHIV virally on ART who are virally suppressed to 98% in 2020. However, when you look at children living with HIV, there was actually a decrease from baseline to current, both for the second 95 target and the third 95 target. So we see that in the second 95 target, there was in 2015 at baseline, there was 71% of children living with HIV on treatment compared to in 2020, this proportion decreased to 54%. And then with the third 95 target, we had 84% viral suppression in 2015, and this value decreased to 70% in 2020. And then when we're looking at the trends from 2015 to 2021 in Sao Paulo, we do see that both among people living with HIV and children living with HIV, there was either it stayed the same or an increase, but the amount of increase was higher for total PLHIV compared to CLHIV. So in the second 95 target for total people living with HIV, we see that there's an 8 percentage point increase from 80% to 88%, compared to a 0 percentage point increase for children. So it stayed at 71%. And then in the third 95 target, we saw that there's a 7 percentage point increase from 2015 to 2021. So going from 59% to 66%. And for the third 95 target among children living with HIV, there was an increase, but slightly less. It was a 5 percentage point increase, going from 50% in 2015 to 55% virally suppressed in 2021. So if we're really trying to attain globally and at the city level, the 95, 95, 95 targets, and ultimately 0 new infections towards epidemic control and 0 HIV-related deaths, it requires that we should make sure that there are no populations, no subpopulations, including children that are falling between the cracks. It'll be helpful to have additional 95, 95, 95 and care continua data disaggregated by age across the network of fast track cities, because this can really inform some of the HIV programming to close the gaps. And we did see that in the most recent report that was released by UNAIDS at the AIDS 2022 conference that happened a couple of months ago, that they reported on a pretty significant gap among 95, 95, 95 targets for children living with HIV. And hopefully this will give some momentum for countries and cities to start calculating and reporting these disaggregated data by age so that we can see in more detail where some of the gaps are. So, thank you so much. I'll stop there.
And I'll probably consider it and add an additional minute. So we have 5 minutes. So any burning questions for the 7 presentations that you have sat for an hour and a half or more, I think, listening to? Any burning questions, any clarity needed, anything you want persons to explain? Yes, we have a question. Can we have a microphone? Do we?
Sorry, my quick question is for Tate Diego. What constitutes peer learning in a hospital setting? And what were the populations? Maybe I didn't get that. And were there any women delivering babies in those peer learning sessions that has led to the good quality of life outcomes?
Let me see if I have get it right, because my English is not perfect. So you want me to elaborate on how are the peer educators? Okay, the peer educators. I mean, in Spain, to become a peer educator, you have to have a university degree that was created specifically for helping people with HIV. We managed to get that also with a grant from a laboratory. So the people are trained with different aspects related to psychology and also well-being and therapy. So they have to be trained. Also, we have an umbrella organization called CESIDA that we have what we call School of Peers. That School of Peers, what do is all the peers that are working in hospitals around Spain, they attend that school, and is a way to have a continuous education on different aspects. And what they do mainly is to serve to not only new diagnosis, but also with people that have any issue or any problem. What they do is to serve as first contact, as a link with other professionals in the hospital. For example, the doctors, the nurses, the social workers. Sometimes even, they contact, if the person don't speak the language because it's coming from a different country, they contact with the translators and everything so they can give the support. Support sometimes is very related to medical issues, for example, doubts about medication, doubts about adherence, doubts about interactions, doubts about all that clinical aspects, but sometimes are things about housing, things about, problems in getting to the hospital because they lack mobility or they live far away. So we have to organize, all things for them to be easy to come, or even to be able to give them medication at home, and so they don't have to come to the hospitals. So there is a whole range of things, from practical ones to more emotional or related to well-being, and to those more clinical related to adherence, etc. So there is a whole array. And as I told you, it depends, because sometimes, people newly diagnosed, they need acceptance and, to become aware of the new reality. So they need a different thing, or a different approach from those people that, have been living with HIV, for example, for 10 years and 25 years, and suddenly something happens in their lives that, they need again the support of a peer to solve certain problems. So it's a holistic approach.
Thank you. We have another question. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you very much. My question is to the last presenter. Very interesting data, especially on the CL-HIV. And coming from South Africa, city of Johannesburg, one will be mostly interested in our sister city, which is eThekwini. So my interest is, sometimes the proportions are a little bit, I don't want to say confusing, but 5 out of 5 is 100%. I don't know if you get me. So what are the numbers, if you've got for eThekwini? Because we kind of looking, especially with the viral suppression, that are not decreasing. And also, in the research, what age band was mostly affected? Because the 0 to 10, you are reliant on the caregiver. And then the 10 to 15 years are the older one that are able to take the medicines, a bit more responsible. So in terms of the viral suppression, which age group was mostly affected, if ever that was looked at? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. So to answer your first question, we do have the number of children living with HIV, the total number, and those who are on treatment as well. Just to reiterate that we're actually looking at not the total estimated children living with HIV, but the diagnosed children living with HIV who are on treatment. And right now it is being reported as 100% in eThekwini. But just to say that I know that there have been improvements in total PLHIV data methodologies in the recent years. And I don't know if that has happened specifically for children living with HIV. So definitely to take that 100% with a grain of salt, but that is what kind of was reported by the municipality. And to address your second question around the age bands, that's a really great question. So for this assessment to kind of standardize across all of the 5 cities that we looked at, we were looking at defining children living with HIV as anyone who was under the age of 15. So in eThekwini specifically, we did not actually look at this 2 age bands. That we just looked at kind of the aggregate data from the 0 to 10 and then 10 to 15. But I think that would be really important given the nuances of what the process is to take treatment between the 2 age bands. I think that would definitely be really important to look at, and hopefully some of this data can then influence delving into such questions and looking at such nuances.
Thank you for that response. I'm going to one final question.
So my question would be for the last member of the panel as well, and hopefully it's not answered already, because I must confess that I missed the very first part of the presentation. But I've found very interesting that you're providing information on children living with HIV, and I agree with that. It's a group that we must consider in order to meet the 95 units horizon. But do we know anything on the reasons, on the causes why there's a decrease among the Bangkok children when it comes to the 95% horizon, or there's lower pace at which these are being met among the Sao Paulo children? Like, what are the reasons behind that? Is it an already answered question?
No, it hasn't been answered, and I'm happy to address that also. Although I think that because I'm not, on the ground in Sao Paulo or Bangkok, I can only speculate. If I had to speculate on the reasons for some of that, one thing is I at least do know in Bangkok that since joining the Fast Track Cities initiative, a positive outcome is actually there's been a big push from BMA, which is the Bangkok Metropolitan Authority, in improving data collection and improving metrics for the 95 targets, as well as scaling up treatment. There's been a lot of key population-led services, really several improvements when we're looking at MSM transgender populations in Bangkok. So my speculation, and again, this is just a speculation based on the context that I am aware of in Bangkok, is that perhaps it's actually a matter of really big leaps in progress in some other populations compared to children living with HIV. And I do know that the CLHIV data was starting to be collected more recently. So kind of that it might just be that that's a gap that has not been addressed in the same intensity as other gaps where Bangkok has made huge kind of leaps and bounds. And then the other thing I'll mention also is that there have been in both cities, but I do know very much so in Bangkok, updates to the methodology for collecting care continuum data. So just as an example, in the past few years, there's been an integration of data from private hospitals, which used to not be there, into the data. So there may have been some nuances also in the methodologies that were updated that saw some of those maybe discrepancies in the data when we're looking at progression that's been made from 1 year to the next, comparing the children living with HIV and people living with HIV. But all a great question, and I think this hopefully is kind of a starting point. These data will be shared with all of the cities in the presentation, and hopefully a starting point to kind of address some of those questions and understand the why behind the data that we're seeing. Thanks for that question.
Thank you. We have come to the end, guys. I really want to say thank you to the panelists, both online and here in person, Calvin and Sindhu online, Siabunga, who had to leave us earlier, Ian, Camille, Diego, and Julian, thank you very much for participating. And we have one final session, guys, which is in the main conference room. So enjoy the rest of the time here in Seville and be safe. Thank you.
All I know, dodge the difficulties and take life slow and